Welcome to the Josh Scanlon Podcast. It is Sunday, June 2nd, 2019. And I'm going to share with you an article I just read that's, it touched me deeply, and I want to share it with you as well. The article is Back Row America by a guy named Chris Arnade or Arnade, Arnade. He's got a book coming out called Back Row America, I believe is what it's called. And I'm going to read you it's such a good, an executive summary, if you will, from an article called firstthings.com. Now, I don't know what firstthings.com is. My inclination is that this is probably for things, if you look at, like AA, first things first, one day at a time. I don't know that this is part of that. I don't know. My inclination after I shared this article, I bet this probably is actually. But such a wonderful, wonderful article that I can't wait to share with you. Absolutely. Remember, God doesn't love you for what you do. He loves you for what you are. All right. And you are a human being created in his image. And your actions will never come even close to what Jesus did. So don't worry about God loving you for your actions, because you can't. You can never do enough to get anywhere near what Jesus did. Never. No one can. Mother Teresa, you name it, none of us can. We're all fallen. We're all human beings, and thus will never be sufficient enough in our actions. And he's okay with that. He loves us for what you are, which is a human being made in his image, and he wants to have a personal relationship with you, which is one of the fundamental things between Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and all the other separates all Christianity from all the other religions out there. Is in Christianity, God wants to have a personal relationship with us. That's why he sent Jesus to come down and suffer for us to open up the gates of heaven. Now, and one of the things I don't know how you answer this as a Christian, and I don't know, you need to know the answer. But if Jesus' death opened up the gates to heaven, and thus you had to believe that Jesus is the Son of God and ask for forgiveness, how did Moses and Abraham and all those guys go to heaven? I don't know the answer to that. My inclination is God is probably smart enough to have that figured out. I don't know. But I do know that for Christians, we know that God wants to have a personal relationship with each and every one of his creation. Thus, it's open there for the taking. And he doesn't care what you've done. He doesn't. I mean, he wants you to be good. He wants you to do good things because it's liberating in of itself. But he wants to love you. He does love you. And he wants you to love him back regardless. And it's, I'm telling you, man, when I get done reading this, it's going to bring a tear to your eye. No other way around that. And I can't wait to buy this guy's book. And I guess his book is called, let's see, hold on just a second. It's Back Row America. Back Row America is his book, and it's on Amazon. I'm not sure if it's on there yet. Let's see. Yeah, it is. It looks like it. I will put a link in the show notes for his book, Dignity, Seeking Respect in Back Row America. That's what it's called. Dignity, Seeking Respect in Back Row America. I will put a link into it in the show notes. I can't wait. All right, so let's read this article. In the end, let me give you a couple advertisements here real quick for the folks who support the podcast. If you don't mind sitting through them with me real quickly. And, of course, certainly using the sponsors that advertise on the podcast. I literally, it's amazing to me. So do frequent them. The Anchor is one of them, of course. But listen to the podcast, the sponsors, and we'll come back here in just a second. Thanks now. Hey, Josh Scanlon Podcast listeners. Want to share your opinions, give feedback, or tell me what you're thinking? Send me a voice message. Voice messages are an easy way for you to send me an audio that might end up on an episode. You know how I do these Q&As all the time? It's actually cool to get an email, but it's kind of even cooler to get the voice message as well. This is the latest feature from Anchor, the platform I use to make this podcast, which I cannot recommend highly enough. Anchor is it's awesome. The fact that they're adding this, it's free, my friends. It's free. There's no reason not to do this. It's just fantastic. So if you want to get your words out there, send me a voice message. All right, here are some things I'd love to hear from you. Questions you have for me. What you think of the episode that we just listened to, what you think of whatever topic. You tell me about your topic. One of the good ones, who do you think I should interview? I think that's fantastic. And I see all your message. I listen to them. Look, man, I'm going to put them on there if they're compelling enough for the vast listening audience. Vast, which isn't all that vast as we sit here. But my YouTube audience is pretty vast, which is cool. And my anchor audience, my podcast, as I build it, could be as more. So if you want to help the podcast and you have some questions for me, man, just send an audio, send a voicemail. All right. How do you do it? You send me a voice message right now from wherever you're listening. Just tap the link in my show notes. I can't wait to hear it, man. It's going to be awesome. Like I said, I definitely will place them on live too. It'll be pretty cool. So don't say, hey, this is Josh Scanlon from your, wherever. I mean, you could if you don't. I'd prefer you didn't. Just say, hey, this is Santa Claus from North Pole or something like that. I mean, I'm not saying make it up, but you can say, hey, there's a Bob from Philadelphia. That'd be fine. But don't say, I live at 121 Main Street. No. We don't want that. So anyway, do that. That'd be cool. I hope you do it. Thanks now. All right, my friends, got an interesting sponsor here. Kristen and Chill. They're a comedy podcast that gets real about depression, therapy, and daily struggles. I actually find that to be incredibly interesting. I find that the depression, I don't suffer from it, but I know people who do, is dramatic and who suffer from bipolar and all kinds of assortment of just mental just stuff. I mean, there's no other way around that. And I actually like the idea of someone taking that and making it into a comedy podcast, real life. And that's interesting to me. So often irreverent and lighthearted conversations range from minor social anxiety to mental health and everything that happens in between. Kristen and Chill, they also cover topics such as having friends with depression, weight gain, suicide prevention, adult bullying, and more. So if you're looking for a more lighthearted take on these things, go check her out now. I'm intrigued. I actually, given that I've talked a few times about depression, about suicide on my YouTube channel and podcast, about drug addiction, about bipolar. This is near and dear to me, man. It is. This is near and dear to me. It's not just something that affects those people. It affects everybody. And, given that I have 4 children, I'm always all in the worry. Like, what's going to happen if one of them goes through that? What do you do? I don't know. So I find it great. So search Spotify and wherever else you listen to podcasts to hear more than 80 endearing episodes of Kristen and Chill. You can also join the conversation and find Kristen on Twitter at Kristen Carney. And that's KristenCarney. Hey, so I look forward to hearing more from her. Thanks now. All right, so I'm going to read to an excerpt from the book Dignity, Seeking Respect in Back Row America from Chris Arnade or Arnade. I'm not sure how you say his last name. And it's J.D. Vance who wrote Hillbilly Elegy. That's funny because I thought it might be the similar book along those lines. I said a profound book will break your heart, but I'll also leave with hope. Could not agree more. So let's read this article from First Things First. And for those you have all solved, you probably don't need to listen to this. But for everyone else, which is me included, I don't have it all solved, and I need the constant reminder that I don't. This article is fantastic. All right, and again, this is Dateline June 2009 from firstthings.com. My inclination is firstthings.com is probably some kind of affiliation with the AA, but I don't know that. I just know First Things First is a big saying in AA, so I literally just don't know. So I'm pleading ignorance. But all right, so here's the story. I first walked into the Hunts Point neighborhood of the Bronx because I'd been told not to. I'd been told it was too dangerous and too poor, and that I was too white. I've been told that nobody goes there for anything but drugs and prostitutes. The people telling me this were my colleagues, other bankers, my neighbors, other wealthy Brooklynites, and my friends, other academics. All, like me, successful, well-educated people who had opinions on the Bronx but had never been there. It was 2011, and I was in my 18th year as a Wall Street bond trader. I spent my work days behind a wall of computers. Let me plug this in because I can real quick chart. Okay. I spent my workday sitting behind a wall of computers, gambling on flashing numbers on a downtown Manhattan trading floor filled with hundreds of other people who did exactly the same thing. My home life was spent in a large Brooklyn apartment in a neighborhood filled with other successful people. I wasn't in the mood to listen to anyone, especially other bankers, other academics, and other educated experts who were my neighbors. I hadn't been for a few years. In 2008, the financial crisis had consumed the country in my life, sending Citibank, the company I worked for, into a tailspin stopped only by a government bailout. I had just seen where hubris, my own included, had taken us and what it had cost the country. Not that it actually cost us bankers or my neighbors much anything. I was in the habit of taking walks, sometimes as long as 15 miles, to explore and reduce stress. But now my walks began to evolve. Rather than setting out on some plan to walk the entire length of Broadway or along the length of the subway line, I started walking the less seen parts of New York City. Along the way, I talked to anyone who talked to me. I used my camera to take portraits of people I met. What I started seeing and learning was just how cloistered and privileged my world was and how narrow and selfish I was. Like most successful and well-educated people, especially in New York City, I considered myself open-minded, considerate, and reflective about my privilege. I read 3 papers a day. I watched documentaries on all of our social problems, and I voted for and supported policies I felt I recognized and addressed my privilege. I gave money and time to charities that focus on poverty and injustice. I understood that I was selfish, but I rationalized. Aren't we all selfish? Besides, I am far less selfish than others. Look how I vote, progressive, what I believe in, equality, and who my colleagues are, people of all races from all places. And this is me just opining here. We are all selfish. The silliness that socialism, and I'm not putting words in Chris's mind. He's done say anything about socialism or anything. I'm saying it. The silliness about socialism is the idea that we can all just get along, that we're not all inherently selfish. We are. That's the magic of Adam Smith. The Wealth of Nations book is that it taught us that you being selfish and me being selfish will be selfish together and make each other better off. So this idea that there'll ever be a place where selfishness we can kick to the side and just all work together, it's silly. Never works and never will, because all people take care of number one first. That's what I tell my kids. I said, I look like an idiot, or I don't like the way my hair is. I said, no one cares. All they care about is themselves. The only people who care are the people trying to put you down to try to make themselves look better. But that's not a way to live their life. Put you down to get up. I mean, that doesn't do anything for them. It just tries to basically be number one in a world of losers. So forget all those people anyway. All right, back to Chris. When I first came to Hunts Point, I was determined to be respectful. I knew that HBO had done an early and salacious documentary called Hookers at the Point. Other documentaries had likewise focused on the drugs and the sex work, not on the lived realities of the majority of the residents. Yeah, imagine that. So I spent most of my time talking to and photographing the bike clubs, the pigeon keepers, the graffiti artists, and the workers from the nonprofits. My focus changed during a rare quiet moment in the industrial part of Hunts Point on a Sunday afternoon. The truck traffic was light and most of the shops are closed. Takesha was standing alone by a trickling fire hydrant washing her face. She was working, wearing thigh-high faux leather red boots and leopard print tights, waving at every car or truck that passed by. And then she yelled at me, "Hey, take my picture!" And when I asked why, she said, "Because I'm a sexy, beautiful prostitute." Over the next half hour, she told me her life story. She told me how her mother's pimp had put her on the streets at the age of 12. How she had her first child at 13. How she was addicted to heroin. I ended up by asking her the question I asked everyone I photographed. How do you want to be described? And she replied without pause, as who I am. A prostitute, a mother of 6, and a child of God. I spent the next 3 years following Takesha and the street family she was a member of, roughly 50 men and women who lived under bridges and abandoned buildings and sheds and pits and broken down trucks on rooftops, or if they scored enough money in per hour motels. What she showed me prompted me to travel to other neighborhoods and cities across America: Buffalo, New Haven, Cleveland, Selma, El Paso, Amarillo. In each of these places, people have a sense of being left behind and forgotten, or worse, mocked and stigmatized by the rest of the world as it moves up and on with their increasing GDP. In many cases, these neighborhoods have literally been left behind by people like me. I spent most of my life focused on getting ahead by education. I left my rural hometown and got into elite schools, which got me into elite jobs, which got me into elite neighborhood, and I was not unusual. My office, my neighborhood, and my adult friends were like me. Almost all of us had used education to get out of a hometown that we saw as oppressive, intolerant, and judgmental. We were the kids who sat in the front row, eager to learn, make sure the teacher knew that we were learning. We were mobile, having moved many times to advance in our careers, and we would move again. Staying put was a form of failure. Our community was global, allowing us to proclaim it to be diverse despite every resident having followed a similar path after high school. Our isolation from the bulk of the country left us with a narrow view of the world. We valued what we could measure, and that meant material wealth. Things that couldn't be measured, community, dignity, faith, happiness, were largely ignored because they were hard to see, especially from so far away. We had compassion for those who got left behind, but thought that our job was to provide them an opportunity, no matter how small, to get where we were. It didn't occur to us that what we valued wasn't what everyone else wanted. They were the people who couldn't or didn't want to leave their town or their family to get an education at an elite college. The people who cared more about their faith than about science. If we were the front row, they were the back. Had I asked people in my hometown why were they still there, I would have received the answer I heard in neighborhoods from Cairo to Amarillo to rural Ohio. They would have looked at me like I was crazy, and they would have said, because it's my home. When communities and towns are destroyed, partly because of the front row's policies of globalization, the front row solution is, well, just move. What matters is growth at all costs, even if it's brutal, and that requires everyone always to be economic migrants. The front row likes to say that the U.S. is a country of migrants, where people have always moved for jobs. It has been done before. The Dust Bowl, the northern migration of African Americans. He doesn't say this, but I say the Irish. But those coming to U.S., the Germans, but those migrations were responses to failures, not signs of success. I could not agree more. Why did people leave the Dust Bowl to go to California? Why did blacks leave the South to go to the North? Why did the Irish come to the U.S.? Why did the Germans come to the U.S.? Why did Guatemalans come to the U.S.? They don't want to, but they're forced to because of religious intolerance, because of racial intolerance, because of potato famines, because of socialist, Chavez, Castro, crime. A few weeks before the election of Donald Trump, I returned home to a neighborhood I hadn't visited in 30 years. I'd spent almost 2 years traveling around the country, and it had been almost 5 years since I had first walked into the South Bronx. I had intended to come back earlier. If I was going to try to understand all of our country, I had to understand my hometown. As I passed one of the older remaining wooden houses, a man sitting on his porch asked if he could help me. It was his polite way of saying, what the hell is a white guy I've never seen before doing walking around here with a camera? I didn't have a good answer at that moment, so I offered up the first name I could remember from someone in high school, an old friend I had spent summers working with. I said, I'm looking for Stephen C. I'm an old friend and wanted to say hello to him. I hadn't seen or heard from him since the last summer we worked together more than 30 years previously. I hadn't even searched for him on Facebook, seen any news about him, or even asked about him. I had no other reason to talk to Stephen beyond my own curiosity. And the old man didn't miss a beat. He just said, oh, Stephen, his people are over on Goldenrod about 4 blocks that way. You can't miss his house at the back end of the circle with a big blue Olds in the driveway. And say hi for me, the old man said. When I found his house his people stayed at, a young mother came out. And when I asked if Stephen was around, she dialed her phone and handed it to me before I had a chance to say who I was. Who is this? Said Stephen. Hey, Stephen, this is Chris. We used to work together back at St. Leo Paint Crew for Bob, way back in the early 80s. Who? Chris, the tall, skinny white guy. We both almost got our ankles broke by the forklift when we were stoned, remember? Chris? Peabody. You called me Peabody. Oh, yeah, Peabody. Damn, man, long time. What can I do for you? Well, I was just in town and wanted to say hi and see how you're doing. I was over your way near your place in Dade City. You okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Over here in Z Hills right now, staying here for a bit, juggling some things. And then there's yell in the background. Hey, I was just running out. Can I call you back? Maybe I'll see you around. Yeah, sure. Just want to say hi. I handed the phone back, sinking into a funk. I'd returned to my hometown because if I was ever going to document the back row, then I needed to look at my own town. Yet it was more than 5 years after I started my project before I'd gotten around to it. I realized I stayed away despite an affection for all my neighbors, childhood friends, and others in the community because I didn't feel like I belonged. During my first few years of college, I came back for summers to live in my old room and work at my old job on the paint crew at the local Catholic college. It was a crew of about 30 people, and I was the outsider. I was the white kid saving money to pay for my escape while everyone else there was older and black. More important, I had a future that didn't include this job, this town, or this place. The others on the crew were working to feed themselves, to feed their kids, to pay for the basics of life. I got to tell you, this might again me. I'll never forget when I got out of the Army and I was in college at George Mason. I was working part-time cleaning carpets. And we had this big black guy named Pat, big bodybuilder. But he was like an old man, not old, but older, probably 35, 40, wife and kids, very Christian guy. And cleaning carpets was his job. And people would request Pat all the time. And Pat would like educate us, show us the ropes and all that. And I always thought, man, it was embarrassing for me because I always remember I wasn't going to stay doing this forever. I was just doing it till I graduated college. And I was working basically what I was doing during summertime, I was cleaning carpets and then I was managing my bar at night, cleaning carpets in the day, managing my bar at night. And then when school started, I quit cleaning carpets, just stayed managing my bar. But for Pat, it was a real gig. And, look, I was in the Army. I was older than most people. I was in the infantry. So I respected, what it's like for labor. But I'll never forget that. Just what my man Chris is talking about here. These older black guys, this is their life. This is what they're trying to do to put food on the table for the family. For me, it's just like whatever. I'll never forget that. It was same thing in the Army. I'll never forget, too. There are dudes. Remember this guy named Corporal Bear, Bayer. He had a wife and 2 kids. It's just an infantry unit, and he was trying to make the Army his career. And for us, same thing. We're just there for the GI Bill, and in the infantry, you got the Army College Fund as well. So you got basically $30,000 for college. But I'll never forget Corporal Bear and some of these other guys trying to make a career out of it. These are guys just regular dudes, man. They weren't trying to get in there to go to college. They're trying to make a career. And Bear was a white guy, for some back town in Nebraska or Ohio or something like that. And same thing, the guys who are in it to get the college money didn't care. We're just like, whatever, just get us out of here. But the guys who are there trying to make a career were the ones who took it seriously because this was their literally career. And I always felt bad. I just always felt bad for Pat, for Bear. Another guy named Sergeant Meyer who used to sell freaking, I think, Nissans in Ohio or Arkansas or something like that. And same thing. And these guys, they're just as much college material as anybody else. And look, just going to college, literally, I could care less. But just you always think you're there as a temporary stop, and they're there for their career. All right, let's take a break real quick. I'll put the other ad. I got 3 ads I got to put on here during each show. So I've already played one. We'll play another one right here. All right, thanks. All right, welcome back. Let's go back to firstthings.com and Back Row America by Chris Arnade or Arnade, Arnad, in his book Dignity, Life from the Back Row of America. All right. So during my first years of college, I came back for summers to live in my old room and work at my old job on the custodial crew, on the paint and custodial crew at the local Catholic college. This is where I met Stephen. Yeah, Stephen. We bonded over smoking weed, drinking, and making fun of the Bible thumpers in the crew. Mostly that meant teasing the preacher man, who was a minister and a custodian. He was the leader of a group of people who used their free time to pray. During our short breaks, or when work got slow, he put on his tiny round glasses and read from the Bible to other workers who were sitting on bare mattresses, crammed into half-painted dorm rooms or sitting on upturned buckets around a custodial closet. Every day, preacher man tried to get me to join him. I always declined, joining him in the prayers, I always declined, preferring to spend our breaks smoking or doing whatever. Preacher man sometimes got frustrated and questioned me. He saw me as a smart kid and thought that with the right training, I could become a good preacher like himself. He couldn't understand why. If I read so many books, I wouldn't take the time to read the Bible. I always told him the Bible wasn't for me. And he shot back, well, what do you believe in? I smiled and told him I was busy or I preferred science or history books. He kept pressing me until one day I finally broke. That day, we were sitting around during our lunch break, just shooting the crap, Preacher man was trying to convert those of us who didn't join his prayer group, and he singled me out, pestering me. After 5 minutes of ignoring him, I said, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in a God. I don't think the world is only 5,000 years old, and I don't think Cain and Abel married their sisters. He said, you don't believe in God? You don't believe in the Bible? Did I understand that correctly? And I said, yeah. I don't believe in God or the Bible. And his eyes narrowed, and he pointed at me. You are an atheist. An atheist. You're going to live a life of sin and end in hell. By then I was done with my town, done with the closed-mindedness, and I wanted out. Although I didn't hate on Preacher Man, I didn't spend much time arguing with him either, and I didn't try to put him in his place. But I did feel sorry for him. Living such a shallow, closed-minded life, I thought. Simple man wasting his life with a gobbledygook and hocus pocus. I viewed him as intolerant. In fact, his intolerance simply didn't fit my own intolerance. My intolerance was credential-based. Yeah, exactly. When I look back now at Preacher Man and others praying, I see people striving for dignity in a harsh world. I see mothers working minimum wage jobs trying to raise 3 children alone. I see a teenager fingering a small cross and a young woman abused by an addict father. I see Preacher Man living across the tracks in a beat-up shotgun shack, desperate to stay clean, desperate to make a sense of the world that has given him little. Their faith may not be true, I tell myself, but it certainly is useful for them. During my years on Wall Street, I argued for policies based on data. I thought we should focus on things that could be quantified, like higher profits or greater economic growth. I measured success by how high the stock market was and whether we had maximized profits and minimized expenses, not by whether we had done the right thing. And I was not alone. Most of us in the front row had decided that it was impossible to identify absolutes, that moral certainties were suspect, and that we all could know, and that all we could know or value was that science revealed to be quantifiable. Religion was an old, irrational thing that limited and repressed people and often outright oppressed them. Yet from the moment I first walked into Hunts Point, I kept finding myself in churches. As I kept finding myself in McDonald's, going there for one reason, because the people I wanted to learn from spent their time there. Often, the only places open, welcoming, and busy in back row neighborhoods were the churches or McDonald's. Often, people using the McDonald's were the same people using the churches, people who sat for hours reading or studying the Bible at a booth. And when I first went to the Bronx, I expected that the people there, those most affected by the coldness and ruthlessness of the world, would share my atheism. Instead, I found a strong belief in the supernatural, a faith that manifested itself in many ways, mostly as a belief in the Bible. Everyone I met there who was living homeless or battling an addiction held a deep faith. Street walking is stunningly dangerous work, and everyone has stories of being cut, attacked, threatened, or stories of others who were killed. Everyone has to deal with the danger. Few work without a mix of heroin, Xanax, or crack. None without faith. You know what kept me through all that? God. Whenever I got in the car, God got in the car with me, says people like Lakeisha. There are dirty Bibles in crack houses, Korans in abandoned buildings. There's a picture of the Last Supper that moves with a couple living on the streets. Rosaries, crucifix, and religious icons are worn for protection and good luck. Pages of the Bible are torn out, folded up, and kept in pockets to be pulled out and fingered nervously and read over in times of stress or held during prayers. When someone goes missing and rumors fill the void, ad hoc ceremonies are held. Small shrines are made from old needles and votive candles lifted from the dollar store with water from a leaking hydrant sprinkled around. The person almost always comes back, either from jail, rehab, or hiding away, his death just a rumor. Mixed with faith in God is a strong belief in the reality of evil. Crossing the bridge into Hunts Point, Keisha looks out the window of my van. This place is so bad and evil. It's like so simple to walk across the bridge, but it's like you can't go across. You understand? This place is evil. It's possessed. It's evil. I've been here a long time. There are bad spirits here. I have seen good people. I've seen people that have family jobs. They come here and they get dug in, and 2 weeks later, they're living in a cardboard box. Her friend Steve listens and agrees, saying, the place is haunted. It pulls you in and chews you up. I was like 5 years old. I was like 5 years in jail. And when I was released, I came back here. And the first day I was back doing crack. One day back, crack. It's an effed up place. Keep coming back to it. Hunts Point is for devils. Man, the addiction, we talk about the zombies, like what's that show called in Atlanta? I forget, Walking Dead, and they're showing zombies. There are zombies right now. It's crackers, heroin addicts, drug addicts. These are literally zombies who the only thing they think about is their next fix. Walking around just soulless, just staring for that next fix. Will do anything to get it, just like a zombie will do anything for blood or whatever it is a zombie's like. It's among us right now. And it doesn't just affect the poor, the blacks, or the freaking, Appalachian rednecks. It affects everybody, man. Everybody. When you're up against evil, whether the mysterious effects of demons or the all too explainable effects of drugs, the world of science, education, and smart arguments don't do much for you. All that the front row offers to those living shattered lives and broken buildings is sterile institutions that chew them up and spit them out. In the view of many of the streets, the Bronx Criminal Court, the NYPD's 41st Precinct, Rikers, the Welfare Office, Lincoln Hospital, rehab clinics, and detox centers, law offices, and nonprofits all have no soul. They are dreary places with harsh fluorescent lighting, checkered linoleum floors, and platitudes hung next to the rules saying, "Hope offered here," next to a sign that says, "Do not touch the TV." These are institutions that back row Americans have to navigate like mice working their way through a maze. Each hour waiting in the hospital, the courthouse, or the intake center is an hour that numbs them. An hour of forms need to be filled and observed rules to be followed. Sometimes a member of the back row really are mice in a maze. Sometimes scientists put them in labs, give them crack, and attach them to monitors to poke and prod. They did it to Keisha once. One time I did this crack study for $2,500. It was psychological. I saw the advertisement on the train and went to this building at the university. They gave me pristine Colombian, small but potent crack. Never had any crap that good in my life. They did me up and down in the head for days. Hell no, they ain't doing that to me again in their hospital. For many back row Americans, the only places that regularly treat them like humans are churches. The churches are everywhere. Small churches that have come and taken over space and lighted up on Sundays and Wednesdays. They walk inside the church and immediately they meet people who get them. The preachers, congregants inside may preach them, even judge their past decisions, but they don't look down on them. They have walked the walk and know the crap they're going through. Not from a book or from a movie or from an article or documentary, but from their own lives or the lives of their friends. They look like them and they get them. There are rules to follow if you join. They don't require having your paperwork in order, having proper ID. They don't require getting grilled about this and that. They say, enter as you are, letting forgiveness wash away a past that many want gone. And you are welcome as long as you try. The churches understand the streets. Understand everyone is a sinner and everyone fails. The rest of the world, the courts, the hospitals, the rehab clinics, the welfare office, police stations, and even some of the nonprofits and schools, especially the universities that won't even let you on campus without the police being called, do not understand. That cold, secular world of the well-intentioned is a distant and judgmental thing. I call it more virtue signaling than anything. The churches are also the way out of addiction, a way to end the cycle. The few success stories get told on the streets are of relatives, friends, or spouses who found God, got with discipline and order of a church, and moved away. Princess met a decent man who was dedicated to Scripture. She got straight, got God, and last we heard, she was on a farm upstate. Niecy went to her grandmother's and found God, and now she has her own 1 year chip. When I walked into the Bronx, I was an atheist. It was something I was sure about. After years of travel to America, I wasn't so sure, though. To my educated, lifelong friends, I might have said I was agnostic or still an atheist, but one who appreciated religion. To the believers I met, I would say I appreciate the power of faith, or I understand the power of the Bible. To the more direct and blunt questions, yes, I read the Bible now and then, but I wouldn't call myself religious, or I have not been saved, but I do read the Bible. None of it was a lie. But the more direct truth was that even after I'd come to see how useful religion was, I still attended services as an outsider, trying to understand why faith drew so many people to it, why it seemed to comfort those who needed it the most. In the language of the church, I wasn't yet saved. In the language of my friends, I was a scientist trying to understand religion. I could no longer ignore the value of faith, not as a scientist, not as a person who claimed to want to learn from others. I still saw it as a utility, something popular because it worked, a crutch, if you will. That's my thought. That's what they all say. I don't need a crutch. Yeah, we all need the crutch, man. Still, after attending hundreds of different services, I was beginning to realize there's more to it than that. My biases were limiting a deeper understanding that perhaps religion was right, or at least was as right as anything could be. Getting there required a level of intellectual humility that I was not sure I had. Oh my goodness, it's almost like the Bible tells us that, which it does. Like most of the front row, I'm used to thinking we have all the answers. On Wall Street, there are a few problems we can't solve without enough smarts, the energy, audacity, or money. We even managed to push death into the distance with enough research and enough resources, eating right, doing the right things, going to the correct medical specialist. The inevitable could be delayed and mortality could feel distant. With a great job and great apartment and a great neighborhood, it is easy to feel we have nothing for which we need to be absolved. Why the camel going through the head of a needle? Interesting how it all comes back to why Jesus is there for those who suffer the most. The meek shall inherit the earth. Why? Because the wealthy, of which I am one. I don't need Jesus. I'm good to go, man. I don't need that crap. The bogeyman religion of 2,000 years ago. The fundamental fallibility of humans seems outdated, distant. It's not hard to imagine that you have everything under control. On the streets, few can delude themselves into thinking they have it under control. You cannot ignore death there, and you cannot ignore human fallibility. It's easier to see that everyone is a sinner, everyone is fallible, and everyone is immortal. It is easier to see that there are things that are just too deep, too important, or too great for us to know. It is easier, far easier to recognize that one must come to peace with the idea that we don't and never will have this under control. It is far easier to see religion not just as useful, but as true. Man, what more can be said? Now, I just know that, I don't know what you can more say to that. It's funny, though, how everything that is talked about from Jesus is about the poor, the meek, the down and out, the outcast, because they're the ones that have the humility to see that they don't have all the answers. That's not, and I don't want to make this like saying atheists aren't like, I mean, my goodness, some of these atheists are just wonderful human beings. Absolutely. This is not an atheist thing versus a religious thing. It's not. I mean, in some ways it could be. I mean, without question, the educated, again, credentials. I don't need that religion. I get that, but it's not like they're saying freaking Sam Harris is doomed. I don't know. You don't know. He doesn't know any better. We don't know. But isn't it interesting? After all these years, people still to this day get on their hands and knees to worship a man that walked this earth from a backwoods town in Judea, Nazareth. I just always go back to Nathaniel. I think it was Philip that said to Nathaniel, let's go see this guy Jesus. And Nathaniel said, what? Jesus? And Philip said, it's this guy from Nazareth. Everyone's talking about him. And Nathaniel says, Nazareth? What good can come from Nazareth? And yet here we are today. It's the relationship. It's not the proof, man. It's the Holy Spirit talks to people in a way that can never be described. I don't know why the Holy Spirit talks to us. I don't know. But it's faith, without question. I didn't call him that. It's faith. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. But I mean, can you prove it? No. But you felt it. And enough people feel it throughout generations that Christianity is still here. The communists can't do anything about it. The other religions can't do anything about it. The atheists can't do it. Atheists and communists are one and the same. I get that. But the credentialed society, the affluent, can't do anything about it. It is still here. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, Back Row America from Chris Arnaud. And again, his book is titled Dignity, Front of the Back Row America. And I will put a link in the show notes. And of course, if you buy it through my link, I get paid big bucks. I think it's a 4% commission. So if you're looking at a book to read and you want something over this summer, it might be a good one for you. I do like the J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy. I didn't quite find it as a lot of people. I think there's this need to feel like this after Trump in particularly. We got to look at the white people. We can't just overlook white people. There's this huge desire now to say, look, poor white people have had it bad too. And I never like that. It's kind of like the Irish. Well, Irish had it bad too. The Irish need not apply, just like blacks, and the Irish, some of these Irish folks trying to, with the Irish, what's the word I'm looking for? The past, ethnicity. I don't know what it's called. Well, Irish had it bad too. We were discriminated against too. Yeah, you weren't discriminated against like blacks and American Indians. Stop it with that right now. The idea of Irish slaves and stuff. Yes, there were indentured servants, but yes, you were not being strung up like blacks are. So stop it. But there's been for the last 20 years this white jealousy, almost, if you will, of seeing blacks and other people of color and gay, all these other people being able to converge around an ethnicity, a skin color, something like that, and a lot of whites have wanted to do the same without actually saying I'm white. So they'll say I'm Irish, so I can go with my Irish brother, or I can say I'm now the J.D. Vance Hillbilly Elegy. I'm a poor white guy, as if that's going to atone for the sins of previous white guys in the past. And I've never felt anything at it. I've never liked it. I've always been independent of all that crap, and I'd never liked it. And that's my concern with this J.D. Vance thing, because and I like J.D. Vance, I think it's interesting nonetheless, but they're trying, especially in the era of Trump. Well, we've got to understand that working class whites have been left behind. I mean, I don't have a qualm with that, no qualm at all. But I don't like being working class whites to the exclusion of anyone else. It's working people, it's American people, middle class, and on the fringes of America who've been left behind. All races, all religions, all creeds, not just whites or blacks. They're all been left behind because of corporate, the Chamber of Commerce of the Bush, Obama, Clinton years. So Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, all those years. I would argue the first part of the Reagan years, not so much, but certainly the latter part, when Reagan was obviously losing his marbles there, the corporate mentality of Main Street, of Wall Street took over for sure. I would absolutely argue that. And we're paying the price. And it's not just working whites, as everyone wants to say. Look, I'm a working white, so now we can say we're white and not feel guilty of it, but we have to throw I'm a lower class white is what we're doing. Now, screw that. It's everybody. Everybody's in the same boat. And if your job is freaking sent overseas, I was talking to my man Amar Shah, who's actually in India, literally in India, not an American Indian, but an Indian. He was born and raised in California, but his job was sent overseas to India. It's and he's a white collar job. I mean, it's just everybody. We're all in the same boat, man. We're all Americans in the same boat, trying to fight the same issue. It's a corporate structure of Wall Street that has allowed for this to happen because the profits at all costs are ruining our society. It's without question. And I'm 100% a capitalist, a free marketer. Absolutely. But you got to call a spade a spade. These guys are taking advantage of the goodwill of the U.S. people. And the U.S. people are saying enough of this. But what they do is they want to create this false dichotomy. Whites over here, blacks over there. Or whites over here, people of color over there. Or Christians over here, Muslims. Screw all that, man. I don't want anything to do with all that. I want to do with the facts that people are people. God created us all in his image. And if his image is you being black and me being white, doesn't that tell you about God? That God's beyond race? No. How can you believe in God and think there's race? I mean, there is, don't get me wrong, but we're all in God's image. If we're all in God's image, God loves us all. Doesn't like the whites, doesn't like the blacks. He loves us all. He forgives us all. And he wants a personal relationship with us all. Get over this hostility of, I want to be thrown in with this group so I can feel guilty or feel not guilty, feel victim status. Screw that. No victim status. I want you to feel freaking, hey, there are things that got to change, but they got to change to affect us all, not just my little group. That's what the devil wants, to get into your group so there'll be perpetual war. That's what the politicians want, you versus them. Screw that. I want it to be, we got to make sure that we take care of everybody first and foremost, and profits, while great, and we should strive for them, not to the extent that we're ruining our society and cultures right underneath us, which we can see. All right, well, that's all my diatribe. We'll see you guys next time. Oh, as always, thanks again for subscribing. Support the podcast. Listen to the sponsors, of course. Support the podcast by putting a 5-star review wherever you find this. Where else? My YouTube channel is just go to youtube.com/Heritage Wealth Planning. Subscribe there, and we'll see you next time. Thanks now.